Okay, hi, my name is Katharina Nimptsch, and I would like to present to you today the citizen science project that we are currently running at MDC. This is within the ORION Open Science Project, and the project is called SMOVE, where SMOVE stands for Science That Makes Me Move. And next slide, please. So about a year ago, there was a new study that was led by the World Health Organization that came to the conclusion that the majority of adolescents worldwide are not sufficiently physically active and thereby putting their current and future health at risk. And so the first question that comes to us when we look at that headline, we ask ourselves, what does sufficiently physically active mean? Can you click once more, please? So what is recommended by the WHO for adolescents of the age 11 to 17 years old is that they should be physically active 60 minutes per day, and that should be moderate to vigorous physical activity, where moderate physical activity is something like jogging, gardening work, household work, and vigorous physical activity is, for instance, playing soccer, playing handball, or carrying heavy stuff up and down the stairs. And they also say that sedentary behavior, so sitting hours, is a problem, and that should be interrupted as much as possible. So next slide, please. And can you click once more? Yes, thank you. So in Germany a year ago, that had a very wide media echo, along with the stereotypes of the adolescents lying around on the couch and looking at their phones. If you click once more, please. So within this WHO study, they also showed results per country. And for Germany in 2016, the result was that 79.7% of boys and 87.9% of girls were insufficiently active in 2016. So those numbers are quite high and quite impressive. Next slide, please. But even, I mean, this study came out a year ago, but we started actually planning SMOVE before that. And even before that, it was known that physical inactivity and sedentary behavior in adolescents have unfavorable impacts on certain health outcomes, such as chronic disease risks, so higher risk of cardiovascular diseases, metabolic diseases, musculoskeletal diseases, and also later risk of cancer, but also immediate effects on obesity, lower fitness, but also school performance and social and psychological health indicators, which can be overall well-being and self-esteem, for instance, or how well the students or the adolescents have a social network around them. And it's also clear that sedentary behavior is an independent risk factor of physical activity. So even like after a day of sitting, we cannot compensate fully the negative health effects of sedentary behavior by being physically active in the evening, for instance. And we focus here on adolescents because they really play a key role. Also because an inactive lifestyle during younger ages tends to lead to an inactive lifestyle and the associated disease risk during adulthood. But so far, little is known about the duration and the determinants of sedentary behavior in adolescents. And this was actually also mentioned in this WHO study in the end, that there is not enough knowledge about determinants of sedentary behavior. And also the overall data on physical activity and sedentary behavior is insufficient. And if there is data, it's mainly questionnaire based, which has certain types of bias, such as potential under or over reporting. And next slide, please. So the objectives of SMOVE that we had was to assess physical activity and sedentary behavior in adolescents with an objective measurement. That means with accelerometers, which are like small devices that we use to assess physical activity. It's small devices that are measuring the movement in three directions, so in 3 axes, and so we can find out whether the participants are physically active or whether they are sedentary. And we also wanted to identify lifestyle and environmental or other factors that are related to physical activity and sedentary behavior. And here comes the citizen science part of our study. And this we wanted to do based on critical input from the citizens. So from the students in this case. We had a feasibility study before that using established questionnaires. But the important thing here, I think, is really that we ask the students, what do you think is affecting your physical activity or your sitting hours per day? So that makes this project quite unique and quite interesting, I think. And then our third objective was to raise awareness of the importance of an active lifestyle for health among the students. Next slide, please. So SMOVE is designed as a school-based epidemiological study. We want to assess physical activity and sedentary behavior in 300 students from Berlin and Brandenburg, grades 8 or higher. And we want to identify also associated factors. And since this is a citizen science project, the role of students is of course crucial. And the main role or the key role is really that they help us, they develop together with us a questionnaire to assess potential influence factors of physical activity and sedentary behavior. And then they also participate in the data collection, but also in the data analysis and in the interpretation of the data. And this is an open science project. So the study data will be made publicly available on the study website, where then aggregated results can be created on the study website. Next slide. So the field phase of SMOVE looks like the following. We are visiting the school classes 3 times. We have 3 visits. Next slide, please. So during the first visit, first of all, we give a short presentation to the students to introduce them to the health relevance of physical activity and sedentary behavior. And then the key point of this first visit is that the students develop a questionnaire interactively together with the scientists. And this you can see here on the picture, what that usually looks like. So the students spread out in small groups where they discuss and come up with up to 5 factors that they think are determining their physical activity or sedentary behavior. And then we collect this together and discuss it and group it. And finally, the students vote for the most important factors. And these are those that then go into the questionnaire. And then we also distribute the accelerometers. That's the active PAL device. It's the small orange device you can see here. It's slightly bigger than a €1 coin. And it's worn on the thigh. So we stick it to the legs of the students. They stick it themselves actually with a Band-Aid that is waterproof. So they are then asked to wear this device for 1 week, day and night. They can take a shower with it. They can basically usually wear it all day, except when they go swimming, they have to take it off, or when they do really physical contact sports. And so then they wear it for a full week. And during the first visit, we also distribute the questionnaires for the teachers and for the parents. Next slide, please. During the second visit, then we bring the questionnaire that was developed by the students and an established questionnaire, and they fill these questionnaires out, and we also collect the parents and the teachers' questionnaires, and we collect the accelerometers that they have hopefully been wearing for a full week. Next slide, please. And then during the third visit, what we do with them, we discuss the individual results of the accelerometer measurement. This is the picture you can see here on the left. That's the individual output that they get. Roughly a week after our second visit, they get this through the teachers via mail. And then we can discuss these individual results with them. And then we also show them aggregated class results and jointly discuss those together. That's of course also a good opportunity to give some input on statistics. And then we discuss that together and interpret this together. Next slide, please. So regarding the current status, so the preparation phase is finished. We got all approvals, like ethical approvals, data protection approval, and the approval of the school authorities. And our quite sophisticated, actually, study infrastructure is up and running. And we have participation agreements signed by 10 schools, and altogether we have 21 school classes who want to participate in the study. And these schools and school classes agreed to participate or expressed their interest to participate after public announcement to schools in Berlin and Brandenburg. And the field phase actually started in February 2020. We completed the data collection in 2 school classes until, unfortunately, the schools were closed during the first COVID-19 lockdown. So then, of course, the study was interrupted. Next slide, please. So what we did during the lockdown actually is that we worked on the questionnaires and the logistics. So we updated the questionnaires, first of all, to match the current situation, because the school situation now after the first lockdown is quite different and can be quite different. So now we have the opportunity also to ask for homeschooling, like sitting hours in homeschooling, for instance. And we also added some questions to find out what kind of determinants or behavior changed due to the pandemic, so they compare before and after the pandemic for certain determinants. And of course, we also had to update the logistics. So we now have a hygiene concept, we wear masks and use disinfectants and so on during our school visits. So luckily we could restart the field phase in mid-September. And since then we have collected data from altogether 4 school classes, and the 5th school class was finished the data collection this morning, actually. And our response rate is actually quite good in the classes. So once we go to a class, 74% of the students actually participate and fill out the questionnaires and also wear the accelerometer device for 7 days. Next slide, please. So I would like to show you just some very preliminary results. This is from the 2 school classes that we recruited or that participated in the study in February. It's altogether 33 students. They were between 14 and 15 years old, so they were 9th grade. And we had to exclude 3 students because the active file records were incomplete. So altogether we have here in this data set 30 students, 12 boys and 18 girls. Next slide, please. So these are the parameters of physical activity as we get them from the accelerometer device. So what you can see here, we have, for instance, the hours they spend sitting or lying. And here, and you have to keep in mind that they usually wear the device day and night. So this includes sleeping hours and also sitting hours during school. So that's how they come up. We come up with quite high numbers here, between 14 and 20 hours of sitting or lying. Then we have between 1 and 4 hours where they are standing, between 1 and 3 hours where they are stepping or walking, so where they are upright and walking. And we have also the step count that is comparable to the step count as we find it in other devices, like those wristbands. So that's between 5,000 and 16,000 in this group. And we have the sit to stand transitions per day. So that's actually what is recommended by the WHO, that the sitting hours are interrupted as often as possible. And you see here that we have a lot of these sit to stand transitions during the day. And we also have a measurement of energy expenditure. Next slide, please. So if we look at the step counts, there is quite well known, and we always hear that the students know that also, this threshold of 10,000 steps that apparently is recommended, but actually this is not really a biological threshold. It's just a threshold that was set in the 1960s, basically by a Japanese company that developed a device that counted basically 10,000 steps per day. And then, because it's a nice and round number, I guess it was overtaken. And if we look at how many of the boys and girls met this 10,000 step criteria per day on average, this percentage is quite low. So 17% of the days had on average more than 17% of the boys had on average more than 10,000 steps per day, and only 6% of the girls met this criteria. If we, however, look on the step counts per day, so here on the right side of the column, we look at the number of days in boys and girls, and the percentage of days where this 10,000 steps were reached. So for boys, on 37% of the days, the recorded days, the boys had more than 10,000 steps, and for the girls, that was 17%. And then if we apply other thresholds, for instance, 7,500, which in adults has been associated with a lower risk of mortality if you have more than 7,500 steps per day. This was actually then, it's a lower threshold, so this was met by a higher percentage of boys and girls. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is just to give you an insight on the questionnaire that was developed by the students. So in the discussion, it came out quite often that they say that the most important determinants for their sitting behavior is homework and social media. And so here are the results for the time. Then in the questionnaire, we ask them the time spent for homework on a school day and on a weekend day. And there you see that there's a wide range of minutes, between 10 and 150 minutes per day they spend on homework during a school day, but also up to 240 minutes on a weekend day. And the time spent for social media, this question was only asked in one of the school classes, because only in one of the school classes, the students said this is important for our sitting behavior. And there you see that those numbers are actually quite high. So between 10 and 360 minutes per day of social media used on a school day, and between 10 and 480 minutes per day on a weekend day. And what was actually quite interesting for us was to see that it's quite easy for them to find out these exact numbers. So if they use the social media only on their phone. They just check on their phone the number of minutes where they have been using WhatsApp or Instagram or whatsoever, and then they write that down. So that was something that was actually new to me. Next slide, please. So just to give you an outlook, we are now fully booked and we will visit school classes until summer vacation 2021. I really hope that we will be able to continue our study during this phase of COVID-19. So we will see. And then one of our next steps will, of course, also be to make the study data publicly available on our study website. And also in 2021, we will start the scientific analysis on the determinants of physical activity and sedentary behavior in adolescents. And I put here some links where you can get more information. And then final slide, please. And with that, I thank you for your attention and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Let me just see if we have anything at the moment. It's usually a little bit of a delay. But yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, do you have any initial thoughts on what the causes might be of this, do you think social media, for instance, is a big factor? Do you think that's going to feature quite a lot in your final analysis?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's actually something that comes up when we discuss the determinants or potential influence factors that we discuss with almost every school class. So this seems to be something that really plays a role for them. One other thing that I found quite interesting was that apparently also the adolescents go to the fitness studios quite a lot to actually, you know, build up their muscles. So that's also something I didn't think of before. So yeah, I think it will be quite interesting to look at those determinants that was their ideas. In the last school class, it also came up that having a pet or a dog probably that determines their physical activities. So there's really interesting input coming from the students, I would say.
It is. That's fascinating. Yeah. I'd love to talk to you longer about this. We have to switch over to the next presentation, but thank you so much for coming in and sharing that with us. And if you go over to the YouTube where it's being streamed live, I think there might be a couple more questions on the chat. So
okay.
Maybe you can answer them by.
I'll have a look there. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And great. Okay.